The barn was packed, shoulder to shoulder, yet the silence inside felt suffocating, thick enough to choke a lesser man. Even the cattle outside had gone quiet, as if the entire ranch sensed something shameful was unfolding. Ilara stood alone at the center, wrapped in a threadbare gray cloak that hung off her like a final defense. Her hands clutched the fabric so tightly, her knuckles turned white. And though she never lifted her head, everyone could see she was shaking. Not the trembling of cold, the trembling of someone waiting to be judged by people who had already decided she wasn't worth the price of a kind word, let alone a bid. Men shifted uncomfortably, not out of guilt, but eagerness to distance themselves from her. Some smirked, some whispered behind palms, some shook their heads as though her very presence offended them. The auctioneer, a stout man with a voice usually proud enough to rattle the rafters, cleared his throat and tried to sound enthusiastic, but even he couldn't hide the uncertainty in his tone. He shouted the starting bid like he was throwing a stone into a well, hoping it might hit something on the way down. It didn't. No hands rose. A few men scoffed softly. One laughed under his breath. Another muttered, "Not worth a dime." The cruelty stung more because it was casual. The kind people delivered without caring who heard. No one asked her story. No one wondered what pain had pushed her to this humiliating moment. They had already decided the bride was damaged goods. A burden, a curse wrapped in a human shell. Caleb Riker watched from the back, his hat low, his face unreadable. He hadn't come to bid. He hadn't come to participate in this ugliness. But something about the girl's stillness held him. She wasn't angry. She wasn't begging. She simply stood there, as if she'd already accepted whatever fate the crowd shoved on her. A kind of quiet, resigned courage that struck him harder than he expected. Then she lifted her head. Just an inch, just enough for him to see a pair of eyes filled with a storm of grief and defiance. Eyes begging someone, anyone, to look at her without cruelty. Caleb felt the world tilt. His chest tightened in a way he hadn't felt in years, a feeling he couldn't name. Before he even understood why, his hand rose into the air. $100. The words echoed. The entire barn froze, and for the first time that night, Ilara stopped trembling. The ride to Caleb Riker's ranch was silent, broken only by the rhythmic clatter of the wagon wheels against the dusty road. Ilara sat rigid, her hands folded in her lap, knuckles white beneath the coarse fabric of her cloak. She avoided looking at Caleb, who sat beside her with an expression that was both unreadable and insistent, as if he could see through her fear. Every so often, he would glance her way, but he never spoke. Not yet. Words felt unnecessary in the heavy, tense air. The landscape stretched endlessly. Flat plains melting into distant hills, golden in the last light of the day. Even the wind seemed hesitant, brushing softly against her face, as though it too didn't want to disturb the fragile balance of this journey. Ilara's mind raced, replaying the auction over and over. The jeers, the laughter, the way every man had looked at her as if she were broken beyond repair. She had spent years learning to hide herself, to fold her pain into silence, and yet, in that barn, the weight of her shame had been unbearable. Caleb's presence now was confusing. He hadn't mocked her, hadn't commented, hadn't treated her like a spectacle. And yet, the thought of being entirely in his hands was terrifying. By the time they reached the ranch, twilight had painted the world in shades of violet and amber. The gates loomed ahead, grand yet forbidding, a boundary between the harshness of the outside world and whatever safety Caleb might offer. Ranch hands paused to stare at the new arrival, whispers running through them like wind through the cornstalks. None of them had ever seen Caleb bring someone home like this. Some looked with pity, some with suspicion, and some with thinly veiled curiosity. But a single sharp look from Caleb reminded them who commanded the land. Inside the house, the lanterns cast warm light, but it did little to comfort Ilara. She hovered near the entrance, reluctant to take another step. Caleb finally spoke, his voice low, steady, and calm. "You're safe here." She flinched at the word, as though the very promise of safety was something alien, almost dangerous. Minutes passed before she dared to lift her hood. The motion was slow, hesitant, trembling with the weight of years of rejection and fear. Caleb's breath caught. The scar across her face, jagged, healed, a map of old wounds, was far more than a physical mark. It was a story of survival, of cruelty endured, of battles fought in silence. And in that instant, something shifted. The image he had carried in his mind of what the bride nobody wanted would look like shattered completely. She wasn't a monster or a mistake. She was a person who had endured and survived horrors no one else could imagine. Caleb froze, not with shock, but with the recognition that he had never expected to see such strength in a face marked by pain. The quiet, raw resilience reflected in her eyes left him momentarily speechless, and for the first time, the distance between them felt charged with unspoken understanding. Ilara moved through the ranch as if she were invisible, her steps careful, almost hesitant, avoiding the gaze of the ranch hands, who couldn't seem to decide whether to pity her or fear her. She kept to the edges of the barns, the fences, the wide-open fields, as if the vastness of the land could somehow shield her from judgment. Every time someone glanced her way, her shoulders curled inward, and her fingers instinctively traced the jagged line of the scar along her cheek. It was a habit born of years of scrutiny, a reflex to hide what others might deem unacceptable. Yet Caleb watched her from afar, silently cataloging the way she moved, the subtle shifts in her posture, and the quiet grace she carried, despite the fear lingering in her eyes. That night, when the rain began to drum steadily against the roof of the barn, Caleb found her sitting alone, knees pulled to her chest, staring at the horses that slept under the dim lantern light. She hadn't spoken a word since arriving, hadn't asked a question, hadn't demanded anything. And yet, there was a weight about her, a quiet intensity that suggested she carried more than just her own burdens. Caleb approached slowly, careful not to startle her, and knelt down on the straw beside her. "Ilara," he began softly, his voice steady but gentle. "Tell me what happened. Tell me who hurt you." Her body tensed. For a moment, he thought she would retreat into silence, as she always had. Then, barely audible, a broken voice answered, trembling but resolute. "My fiancé," she whispered. The words hung in the air, fragile, yet filled with the gravity of her past. He said a bride must be perfect, beautiful, unblemished. And when I wasn't, her fingers traced the scar again, and she faltered, swallowing hard. "He made sure no one else would want me." Caleb's chest tightened with anger he barely recognized in himself. He felt the injustice of her suffering as if it had been visited upon him personally. Yet her story didn't end with the scar. It was a chronicle of defiance. "I refused to marry him," she continued, her voice gaining strength despite the tremor. "So he learned to hate me." He looked into her eyes, seeing not just the pain, but a quiet, resilient fire that had refused to be extinguished despite every attempt. "You're safe now," Caleb said, the words carrying a promise and a warning all at once. "Wherever he is, he will never touch you again." Ilara's breathing slowed, though her eyes still reflected the weight of years spent surviving in silence. Caleb understood then that her past was not something she had overcome lightly, and that her scars, both visible and hidden, were proof not of weakness, but of unyielding strength. For the first time, he realized that protecting her was not just about keeping others away. It was about honoring the courage she had carried all along. The morning was heavy with tension, even as sunlight spilled over the ranch in golden streaks. Caleb had been restless all night, patrolling the perimeter, scanning the horizon with an intensity that came from knowing danger was approaching. He didn't need to wait long. Dust kicked up along the far ridges, and the rhythmic pounding of hooves against hard earth signaled riders coming fast, confident, and armed. Ilara, who had begun to feel a fragile sense of safety, stiffened immediately, her eyes wide as the men approached. She instinctively moved behind Caleb, as though his presence alone could shield her from what was coming. The man in front was unmistakable. Tall, imposing, with a black coat that seemed to swallow the morning light, and a smile that didn't reach the cold sharpness of his eyes. He tipped his hat with a practiced air of cruelty. "Afternoon, Ilara," he called out, his voice smooth and menacing. "Miss me?" Ilara's breath caught, and for the first time in days, her composure faltered. She hid behind Caleb, her hands trembling violently. The man's presence was a stark reminder of everything she had been forced to endure. The lies, the threats, the belief that her worth was tied only to her appearance. Caleb stepped forward without hesitation, placing himself between her and the riders. His eyes, cold and unwavering, locked on the man. "You're trespassing," he said, his tone calm but lethal. The kind of quiet authority that made even the bravest men pause. The man tilted his head, smirk curling across his lips. "I'm here to collect my bride. She was promised to me." His gaze flicked to Ilara, lingering on the scar that had so long been a source of her shame. "She belongs with me." Caleb's fists clenched, knuckles white. "She belongs wherever she chooses, and she didn't choose you." His voice carried the weight of absolute certainty, of someone who would not allow injustice to pass unchecked. The man's eyes darkened, and a hint of menace surfaced. "You think that scar was bad? I could carve 100 more." Illara gasped, fear tightening her chest. But Caleb's response was swift. In a single motion, he drew his gun and leveled it directly at the man's forehead. "You take one more step toward her," Caleb said, voice icy calm, "and your next breath will be your last." The standoff stretched for tense moments, the world around them seeming to hold its breath. The man finally smirked, but uncertainty flickered across his face. Slowly, he signaled to his men and turned his horse, retreating with the threat still lingering in the distance. Ilara's body trembled, but not from fear alone. For the first time in her life, she realized someone had truly fought for her, someone who saw her not as damaged, but as deserving of protection. Caleb's presence, his unwavering defense, shifted something deep within her, planting a seed of trust that had long been buried beneath years of betrayal. For the first time, she could imagine a life where she was no longer running, no longer hiding, and no longer defined by the cruelty of another. Dawn broke slowly over the sprawling ranch, painting the fields in shades of gold and amber. Yet the world outside held no comfort for Ilara. She had spent the night packing her few belongings, her movements mechanical, her thoughts consumed by one desperate idea: to leave before danger returned. Years of living as unwanted, as feared, had taught her that safety was never guaranteed, and she could not bear to bring anyone else into the path of her past. Every step toward the door felt heavy with guilt, and she imagined Caleb waking to find her gone, wondering if he had lost something he barely understood the value of. But as she reached the threshold, the soft creak of the door made her freeze. There, standing in the early light, was Caleb, arms crossed, expression unreadable yet resolute. He had been waiting. The quiet authority he radiated made her falter, but she couldn't meet his gaze. "You going somewhere?" he asked, his voice calm yet carrying an intensity that made it impossible to lie. Ilara's lips trembled. "I can't stay," she whispered, voice barely audible. "He'll come after you, because of me." Caleb stepped closer, his presence solid and grounding, leaving no room for excuses or hesitation. "Let him try," he said simply. The certainty in his words was not boastful, but protective, a vow that no threat would reach her while he stood between her and the world. Tears filled her eyes, blurring the golden morning. "Why?" she asked, her voice breaking. "Why risk anything for someone like me?" Caleb's hand reached gently for her face, his thumb brushing along the scar she had long believed defined her. The touch was soft, deliberate, and reverent. "Because the first night I saw you," he said, voice low and steady, "I froze, not because of what others might think, but because I realized that the world had been blind to the strength in your eyes." Her breath hitched. For years, she had hidden from the world, believing herself unworthy. Yet in his gaze, she saw no fear, no judgment, only recognition. "That scar," he continued, his thumb tracing the line she had once dreaded, "is not a mark of shame. It is a symbol of survival, of courage, of resilience. You have endured what most could not imagine, and that makes you stronger than anyone who ever tried to break you." Ilara leaned into him, her tears mingling with the sunlight, relief and hope intertwining in a way she had never known. In that moment, the ranch, the scars, the fears, and the past all faded, leaving only the understanding that she was no longer alone. She had found a man who saw beyond the surface, who valued her for the strength and beauty she had always carried inside. The bride nobody wanted had finally found someone who would never let her feel unwanted again. And for the first time, she believed she was free. From the moment Caleb Riker stepped into that auction barn, nothing about the world around him prepared him for what he would see, feel, and ultimately protect. Ilara, the girl everyone had dismissed, mocked, and rejected, was not a victim of her scar, but a survivor of cruelty. Her journey from the shadow of shame and fear to a place of safety, trust, and recognition is a powerful reminder that true worth is never defined by society's shallow judgments. Through every silent ride, every tense confrontation, and every moment of vulnerability, Caleb and Ilara's story illustrates that courage often hides behind quiet resilience, and love often appears in the moments when someone sees the strength behind the scars. This tale is more than just a story of a rancher and a bride. It is a testament to human dignity, compassion, and the power of seeing someone for who they truly are. It teaches us that the world may try to brand us as unwanted or imperfect, but those labels can never diminish the courage, resilience, and worth that lie within. When someone finally stands for you, fights for you, and acknowledges your strength, the transformation is profound. From fear to trust, from isolation to belonging, and from being unseen to being truly seen. In the end, Caleb didn't buy a bride. He discovered a soul who had endured unspeakable pain and emerged stronger than anyone could imagine. Ilara didn't need saving. She needed someone who could recognize her strength and walk beside her. Together, they teach us that beauty is not flawless skin, that love is not blind to scars, and that courage is the quiet force that can withstand cruelty, rejection, and fear. Their story is a call to every one of us to see beyond appearances, to honor resilience, and to stand for those who the world has deemed unwanted. In recognizing the worth in others, we uncover the power, courage, and hope that lie within ourselves. Ultimately, this is not just a story of survival, but a story of triumph. A reminder that even in the darkest moments, when the world has turned its back, strength, dignity, and love can emerge, forever changing the course of a life once deemed unworthy. It is a story that whispers to every heart, you are more than what the world says you are, and someone who truly sees you will never let you go unnoticed.